I had the opportunity to live in several different places as a kid. My dad was an electrician, and so we spent a lot of time in a couple different towns in California and a little bit in Arizona and Oregon. And so when I was in the fifth grade, we moved to Astoria. So that was probably my first experience with being around trees because California is, most of my California time was in like the Bay Area. So trees were there, but it was more city. And so, being in Astoria, I was exposed to both the sea world, fishermen, fishing, and trees. And then we moved to Tillamook right before I started high school. And so I don't know that I understood that I had an appreciation for trees, but I definitely liked the greener colors and the cleaner, just liking that and liking the small town atmosphere, feeling of home. Because being a kid who moved from, every couple years, it was hard to have roots, hard to have the um, long-term connections. So, so that's probably when I started forming that just appreciation for trees and just the outdoors. And when I met my husband, he had just recently started his own reforestation company, and his father was a forester. And so, as we got to know each other better, he would take me, to show me different things in the forest, and that was how we started our relationship. And then after we got married, we kind of began to realize that we had more connections than we thought, because my family, actually, my great grandparents immigrated from Sweden, and my great grandfather was a millwright. And in Sweden, they have a serf system where you could never be the owner of the business. You would always be a worker. And so when he was 18, he decided he was going to come to America. And so he came in 1900, ended up in Michigan, and it was very cold and not at all like Sweden. And so someone told him to come to Oregon because the forests were more like home. And so he did. And long story short, he actually harvested trees in Grand Ronde and the Beaver area in the 1920s. And my grandmother went to Tillamook High School. And during that time, they lived in Milwaukee, Oregon most of their lives. But during the time that they were harvesting for those 4 years, they were on the coast. My grandparents had a lumber yard. So there's another, connection to timber. And then I married Paul, who his father started out as a forester in the 60s, in the late 60s, actually replanting some of the ground that my great grandfather had harvested, generations before. And then through our reforestation business, we actually got to work some of that ground too. And so it was just, it's funny how as you go through life, our worlds are really not that as large as we think it is. There's lots of connections. And so for me, once I realized through my husband that I had this, I always kind of knew about the timber side of my grandparents, but I didn't really know very much. And then marrying into timber, I just, that appreciation grew, and it was like, oh my goodness, I should learn more about this. I should understand a little bit more about trees, and just a real respect for the people who worked in the woods, and understanding, that I have that heritage, that, my great grandfather was one of the millwrights that, cut down some of these great big huge trees, and um, was part of that generation of um, pioneers that built a lot of the communities in the early 1920s. And my grandparents were very prominent in Portland. And so, probably because of their timber heritage, from their parents that immigrated from Sweden. So I guess that's my story about where I started to get that passion for timber. Probably one of the best things that OWIT did for me was, as a young woman who had just gotten married and um, didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. My husband, we had this small business, and I really felt like, what was I going to do that was something that was me. And so I had an opportunity to meet some women who were in Oregon Women in Timber, and I just really was fascinated with these uh, strong personalities, and I was fascinated with strong women, that anything was possible. And I think that OWIT, I really felt mentored by the women who came before me, and I was really just in awe of the things that they were able to accomplish and wanted to be like them. And so I think that was a really positive thing for me. It was positive for me to come to meetings and see what they were doing and learn from them. And I think, well, I could do that. I can take this on. I could help with this. I could be part of this. And this is a positive thing because we're talking about people who, are doing important work. We're talking about this being a renewable resource, and we're talking about why we're using these products. And so, so that was a positive. Oh, it's always been a positive thing for me. Well, I think it's become who I am. It's kind of taken over. It's important to me to leave a good legacy, to make sure that this is something that continues and that, doesn't die with a few of us that decide to retire or move on, that this is something um, that continues to kind of be a tribute maybe to the folks who work in the woods, and a tribute to the people who provide these important products. And it just means to just be a part of something that's maybe bigger than me. It's important to be a part of something that will continue on. And so I guess I don't really consider myself a woman of the woods. So I mean, I'm a woman who is very passionate about these people, and I feel like I'm kind of on the outside, witnessing some wonderful things and encouraging it and supporting it. But I'm not the one who does it. I'm the one that is supportive and there. There's a lot of other amazing people out there.